Hi, welcome to Hall 2. Our next speaker is Dr. Helene Pellerin. Helen is a part of the first cohort of instructors for Human Diver. She is an anesthesiologist from Quebec City in Canada and has a high interest in sharing knowledge on human factors and non-technical skills to divers of all levels. Helen will be speaking about human factors for novice divers, how and why. Helen is a part of the first cohort of instructors and we're looking forward to, with interest into your presentation. Thanks very much, Helen. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ange. Hi everyone. It is a real pleasure and an honor to be with you today. I'd like to thank Garrett Locke for inviting me to present to this conference. So let's just start. Today I want to talk about introducing human factor to the novice divers. And I will try to do that by answering two questions. First, why human factor are important for the new diver, and then how to introduce human factors to the new divers without overwhelming them. So first question is the why. Why should we try to introduce human factors early in the training of divers? Like, there's already so much to learn. Why is human factor so important that we need to teach it right from the start? To answer that question, we all need to agree on what are human factors and non-technical skills. So I know the whole conference is on the topic, but in my own words, human factors and non-technical skills are the ways we act and react to something, the ways we interact between each other. We are all human, so there are some things that are common between all of us regarding our behaviors, our thinking process, our decision-making process. So there's a common ground. Developing our knowledge on human factors is about developing a better understanding of the mechanism behind our behaviors. So understanding why we instinctively act or react in a specific way, why we are all prone to the same behaviors. Human factors are in fact called non-technical skills, and non-technical skills are in opposition to technical skills. In diving, that would be the control of your buoyancy, your position in the column of water, how to handle SMB, propulsion skills. It's important to remember that there's no relation between technical skills and technical diving and non-technical skills. So non-technical skills apply to all divers, whether they are technical diver or recreational divers. Human factors are numerous. Most often we can classify them under 5 important skills, which are situational awareness, decision-making, communication, teamwork, and leadership and followership. Garrett Locke in his class has developed this schematic representation of human factors to describe their interdependence. So you can see that all non-technical skills are dependent upon each other and they all are in relation. That means that better communication will favor a better situational awareness, and a better situational awareness will favor better decisions. On the side, you can see that stress and fatigue have a big influence on our non-technical skills, and they can impede our efficiency. So this must absolutely be taken into consideration by all divers, including new divers. So we have to teach them the importance of how fatigue and stress will impact their diving. And also, like you can see with the big blue box, that those non-technical skills, like to make sure that they can be used appropriately, we need to develop a safe environment where failure does not have a stigma associated with it. Like where learning from failure can happen. Like this environment we need to aim for to favor the safe growth of diving. So let's go back to our first question. Why human factors are important for the new diver? First, it is to increase safety of diving, to make diving safer. The underwater world is rootless. We can't breathe underwater. Therefore, as divers, we put ourselves in a dangerous environment. We rely on our equipment, on our skills to survive underwater. And too often, we are very poor at assessing what we know and what we don't know. When I think about myself and how I was as a new diver, I'm like, oh my, like there's so much that I didn't know then. So as we are not good at assessing our competence, it makes it easy to exceed them. So learning about human factors is a way of improving our own self-assessment. Acknowledging our level of competence is the first step in not exceeding it. Diving within our limits will be safer. If we want to enhance safety, we should know what are the causes of diving accidents. Unfortunately, it is very hard to find complete information about a diving accident. Most often, information is missing, and it is very hard to understand the complete course of actions that led to the incidents. We often see only the last part of the story, and we miss what is upstream. In 2013, Garrett Luck gathered some data from an online survey in which more than 1,000 divers took part. Divers were asked if they had incidents from a list of events that was presented. Then they were asked which factors could have contributed to their incidents. And these are the results. So high in the list, we can see complacency, overconfidence, error in judgments due to lack of experience, poor communication, haste, misplaced motivation. Those are all factors closely related to human factors. So human factors are important. In the province of Quebec, where I live, a concerning number of diving-related accidents led to the implementation of a diving medicine call center in 2004. Researchers from that institution reviewed the inquiries made to the call center over 15 years of activities, and the results were published last June. It is an interesting paper showing that the call center is an excellent resource for the community. However, what is more interesting is these other data that are coming from the same group of researchers, and that should be published in the coming year. Neil Pollock is part of that group, and is a well-known researcher that probably many of you know in those that are related in the work of hyperbaric medicine. So this group reviewed the fatalities in diving in the province of Quebec in Canada over the past 35 years. They identified 63 deaths related to diving. The majority of the deaths were attributed to drowning. However, this is only the last part of the event. They reviewed the contributive factors that led to the fatalities. And there is very interesting stuff there. As you can see, the most frequent contributor factor to the diving fatalities was exceeding our competence. Many other contributive factors are closely related to non-technical skills, such as complacency and anxiety. There were multiple contributive factors that were identified in the majority of cases. That means that to understand the cause of the accident, we have to go deep inside the story. Most of the accidents are not the result of a single mistake. It is rather an escalation of little things that happen on that day under these specific circumstances. All these little things came together at the wrong moment, and it led to the accident. So as you can see, human factors have a significant role in diving accident and incident. Therefore, training in human factors should help to enhance safety. And as we want all divers to be safer right from the initiation of diving, we should start including the language of non-technical skills and human factors right from the start of any diving course. When a newbie takes a diving course, he initially learns to become a diver by practicing all the basic skills of diving: buoyancy control essence, propulsion skills. But when do we introduce the notion of being a diver, being a responsible diver? 2 weeks ago, I was a surface dive master during an open water certification. And at the end of the weekend, after their last dive, one diver came out of the water all happy about the dive. And the first thing they asked to their instructor was, "I wonder how much air I have breathed. I have breath." And at that moment, I was thinking, oh my God, this is wrong. There's something very important missing here, because we are giving a certification to dive to someone who clearly hasn't learned how to monitor their dive, how to monitor their gas consumption during the dive. A crucial lack of situational awareness. And this can clearly put that person in danger in the future, as much danger as not controlling their buoyancy. Being a diver is much more than just diving per se. So going back to our question, why human factors are important for the new diver, I've just talked about increasing the safety of diving by teaching non-technical skills and by putting some emphasis on non-technical skills right from the start. But safety is also about the development of a just culture. I'm not going to expand on this topic too long, as it is covered in other talks during this conference. But to develop a culture, what is better than introducing it right from the beginning? If we as divers are born in a just culture, it is going to be our natural habitat. It is going to be much easier to promote it, to be comfortable in it, to live within a just culture. It is just like a mother tongue. As you can hear, English is my second language. I'm not bad at it, but I'm way more fluent in French as it is my first language. So if I would give this talk in French, that would be much more fluent. So if we want the diving community to be surrounded by a just culture, we must introduce it right from the start, right from the beginning. Human factors are also important for new divers because we want them to embark on the journey of continuous learning. You don't become a diver after a certification. You become a diver as you dive. And to improve and get better, we must do some self-reflection and self-learning. Debriefing is the most powerful tool to learn from our dives. A debrief doesn't have to be long. It is a tool to make us realize there are some skills that we do well and there are some other that we must improve and we need to work on them. I'll talk a little bit more about debriefing in a few minutes. And finally, human factors are important for the new diver because implementing non-technical skills in the education of divers right from the start is, in my opinion, the best way to educate responsible diver. We teach the new diver how to dive and how to be a diver. So let's move to the how. How to introduce human factors to the new divers without overwhelming them. As I already said, I think we need to introduce it right from the start with examples that are adapted to their level of training. As for any skills, new diver will be able to develop their non-technical skills as they develop all their other skills. Initially, we should focus on basic non-technical skills. Like, for example, if I give a long talk on leadership on day one of a diving course, the students will feel that it might be a little irrelevant. However, introducing the notion of situational awareness, for example, with examples that are like related to their early dives, it will be much more appropriate, and the students will understand and feel related to these non-technical skills. So to illustrate this, let me give you like an example with situational awareness as we're talking about it. So what is situational awareness? How can we simplify its definition? Well, in my word, situational awareness is our ability to perceive changes in our environment, to understand those changes, and then anticipate how they can affect our dive. And we can illustrate this like very simply by various examples. The first level is perception. So we see, we hear, we feel the things in our environment. However, we must tell the new divers that we see what we are looking for. Our brain perceives a million things in our environment, but there's only a few that process to our consciousness. And what will process to the consciousness is like what we are looking for, what can be more interesting, what can seem more dangerous. But we have to be aware that we don't perceive everything, and the new diver must be aware of that as well. The more we learn on factors that can affect our dive, the more experience we get, the more our perception will expand, and the more we will see during our dive. The second level is comprehension. So it is something to see what is around us, but we also need to go beyond that and understand the impact of the environment. So if I see longboards floating in one direction, I should understand that it indicates the direction of the current. And the third level is the projection. Like, we need to anticipate how the element will affect our dive. So if we keep talking about the current, I see the current going in one direction, I should think and I should understand that the first part of my dive, I should go facing the current, because I might use more gas facing the current. And if I do the opposite, going with the current, I might end up being too far away and not able to come back to the boat, as I might use more gas fighting the current on the way back. So there's our little bits to teach the new diver. Another example, diving in a dry suit. As we get deeper, the suit becomes tighter, but we need to recognize and feel the tightness. Often when we do the first dive with a dry suit with a new diver, like initially they don't really recognize that sense of tightness. So they need to recognize it, to feel it, and then to understand that this sensation is the effect of pressure, and as we go deeper, it will increase. Then they have to anticipate that if that sensation, that tightness increases, they will get stuck in their suit and their movements will be impeded. Therefore, they have to put air in the dry suit to facilitate their mobility. So this is a very easy example that we can share with new divers diving in a dry suit. Situational awareness is a skill that develops with practice, with experience. and you can improve it throughout your life. Here's a representation of the difference between a new diver and an expert diver. The big circle represents your attention capacity. So when you are a beginner, the biggest part of your attention goes to your technical skills, how to control your buoyancy, how to clear your mask. That only leaves you with a small capacity to feel your environment, to see what is around. While you focus on clearing your mask, like you might be so focused on this that you might not see the big eagle ray just floating next to you. On the other side, as you become an expert, all these technical skills will become a second nature, and you don't have to think about how to clear your mask. You just do it automatically. Your capacity to perceive the environment then will become larger, and you'll have much more attention that you can dedicate to this task. However, we have to remember that each time we add something new to our diving, when we learn new skills, such as how to handle a stage or like anything different, we go back to the left side, to the left circle, and our attention capacity shifts again towards the technical skills. Stress is another factor that has a negative impact on our attention, and it keeps us on the left side. So I think these are very good starting points to educate the new diver on situational awareness. It is important for them to know that as long as their technical skills are not mastered, they will miss out on their environment. Therefore, when they start diving, they should choose very carefully the environment in which they dive. They should choose carefully with whom they are diving, who are their buddies. Decision-making is another non-technical skill that should be introduced early in the diving training. How does your brain work? Unless the new divers are very interested, we don't necessarily need to give them long talks on decision-making processes or bias that influence their decision. However, we should definitely introduce tools to improve their decision-making. Debriefing is a very powerful tool to improve our decision because it helps us to learn from one dive to the other and to improve our situational awareness. To learn from our experience, but also to learn from the experiences of someone else. When I was a novice diver, I went to the Caribbean, and on one dive, we were supposed to go to see a particular rock formation. However, halfway through, our guide decided to turn the dive. As we came back on the boat, I asked, what happened? Like, why did we turn around? Like, we were not there yet. We didn't see that big formation. And then the guide told me, like, that the current was increasing, and like she felt that some of us might not be able to swim back on the boat, or some others might not have enough air to come back if we go further. So I was very surprised because during the whole dive, I had not realized that the current had increased so much. So then she told me what signs to look for in the water to perceive the current. So after that, on every dive, I was looking for these signs and trying to perceive the current. So you can see that I learned a lot from that dive because like we had that debrief, because we had that little chat afterwards, and because the guide told me how to look for signs to notice the current. Without that chat, everything would have been unnoticed to me, and I would just be, again, like be a happy young diver. A debrief doesn't have to be very complicated. Like we can just ask simple questions. What did I do well? What can I improve? Was the planning of the dive well done? How could we improve the plan for our next time? Was there anything you wanted to communicate and you were not able to? These are all little questions that we could ask our partner after the dive to improve for the next dive, make some improvement and to learn from our experience. To make it work, we need a disciplined approach. Like we must do a debrief after each dive. It has to become a habit. It has to become natural. And as soon as we will see, like the more we will do it, the more we will learn from it. With a lot of practice, it will become a second nature to reflect on our dive and to learn from our experience and also from the experience of our bodies. Because we have to remember that even if you dive with someone, like you might experience two very different things during the same dive. And if you don't talk about it, if you don't share, you just learn anything. Another thing that we can introduce to a new diver as we present on decision making is how bias can influence our behaviors. When we teach new diver that checklists are important and are a powerful tool to make the diving safer, we tell them that they must do an equipment check with their body before every dive. Right? This is the rule. This is what we are taught like from very early on. So initially, like a new diver will do it. Then, as things gets better and they want to become more efficient, instead of doing it always with their body, they might start to do it by themselves. Okay, let's keep going. They want to become, again, more efficient, and poof, let's do it just like before the first dive of the day. Everything goes well, like we keep diving, and to even like to be more efficient, we become stronger diver. We feel that we are much at our ease. So we're gonna do our equipment check just when we set up our gears. And then like we keep doing, we are very used to our same partner. If we change body, that's the time when we're gonna do our check. Only when we dive with someone else. Maybe only when we take a new class. And then an accident happened. I had a problem with my equipment. How come? Like I did my check as usual, and like I always do my check like very carefully. And then you just realize, okay, maybe I didn't do it exactly as I was doing it initially. And you look at that a little bit more closer, and you realize, well, I'm kind of far away from the standards, because like I was supposed to do my check before every dive with my buddy, and I don't think I have done that for a very long time. How do we call that behavior? Like this is normalization of deviance. And there was a long talk on this yesterday. The normalization of deviance is a normal behavior. Everyone will just fall into this because it is the nature, it is our nature to become more efficient. But we have to remember that success is a very lousy teacher, because when the course of our actions leads to success, we don't question ourselves. We just think, okay, like nothing happened, everything went well, so what I'm doing is probably good. This is something very important to teach to novice divers. It is not because nothing happened that it means that everything that you did was correct. You might just have been lucky. So on a regular basis, you have to review your behaviors. Like, don't trust the happy endings. Review and question the course of your actions. Review the rules on a regular basis and aim to understand the rules, the why behind the rules. Like if you understand the purpose of the rule, you'll be in a better position to get around them if needed. Because yes, sometimes we need to go around the rules. So it's just not by applying them. We need to understand them and to use them appropriately. Communication is another non-technical skills that should be presented to novice divers. As you saw early in my first slides, like miscommunication, failure to communicate are very often contributive factors to incidents. Beatrice gave a brilliant talk on the topic a little bit earlier today, so I won't expand too much on communication now, but novice diver should be taught about how to improve their communication. And this will help them in their diving, but also everywhere else in their lives. So things that we can teach them, like what are the barriers to communication? Like water is a very important barrier to communication, but stress, workload, distraction are also important barriers. Like we often don't put enough emphasis on distraction. When we give a class to new divers, like we brief them, we communicate them the plan of the dive, but then when we start the dive in the water, how many of our students remember what the plan was? We just need to ask them, can you tell me the plan of the dive? And we will realize that many of them like just forgot it because they were not paying enough attention. They were too stressed. They were thinking about someone else, something else. So this is very important to make them realize that if they want to be a good diver and if they want to dive the plan, they have to understand it and to listen to it initially. So as you can see, a lot of external and internal factors can impede communication. And as I just said, the plan of the dive is something very important to be shared by all the divers, but also the contingency plan. What are we going to do if something bad happens? And this is something that we often forget to communicate. Or maybe we communicated like on the first day of the week, but now we are on day 5 and it's just like somewhere way behind. And maybe it is today that it is going to be needed. It is very important to teach the new diver how to make sure they understand what is said and also how to make sure they are understood. And there are a lot of tools that we can give them and share with them to help them to improve their communication skills. We also need to create the expectation that good communication before, during, and after the dive is mandatory. And novice diver, they need to work on their communication skills as much as they work on their buoyancy. Same for situational awareness. Like they need to work on those skills as much as they work on their technical skills. And that's what will make them safe diver. So in summary, human factors and non-technical skills have a major role in improving the safety of diving for all divers, for technical divers, but also for novice diver. And we should not forget those divers. I hope I haven't convinced you that it is important to introduce human factor early in the training to enhance safety and to enable the new diver to become responsible divers. I've also shown you that non-technical skills can be taught to new divers, and we can give them practical examples adapted to their level of diving. We have to be careful when we talk about non-technical skills and not to overwhelm them, because it is very easy, especially when we have a little we are very interested by non-technical skills and human factor. It is very easy to expand a little bit too much and to overwhelm the new diver. So we really have to focus on examples that are adapted to their level of training. I also think that introducing it early will help them grow with that new mindset, and it will help to enhance the culture of psychological safety. Like introducing that new mindset and that new culture early in training will support the development of a just culture in the whole diving community. And that will be a culture when we can all learn from our mistakes and failures and make diving safer for everyone. So this is it for me. So I'd be happy to answer to any questions you might have.
Hi, thanks Helen for such a great presentation. Very relevant to people coming into the diving industry, starting off as diving, as open water divers, and I see the strength and relevancy in what you're discussing. One of the questions that I have is, what would you think are the most important barriers, or what do you think are the most important barriers to introduce human factors to novice divers?
Well, that's a very good question. Like, there are a lot of barriers. The first barrier is like to be aware that human factor is very important to diving at large. Another barrier that is very important is the general expectation that diving course can be completed over a couple of days. A lot of people go in vacation and they expect to complete their, like to come back as a diver. Like they do a short course, do some dives, and poof, they are a diver. Yeah. There's already a lot of skills that need to be taught, and on such a short period of time, it's very hard. Like there's not that much time to add new element. And also, when people do their classes like on vacation like this, it is very hard to have a follow-up. So you don't know what those divers become. Human factors is something that is very important, but it's sharing a new culture, new knowledge. That is important for the new diver, but it also will be mostly important for the whole diving career. So like the benefits are not seen right away by the new diver. Like we have to make them aware of that. And like it is a very important challenge as well. So probably time pressure emphasizes the importance of human factor, kind of bringing human factor in the front seat of diving course, like is the challenge, because we want it to happen in such a short period of time.
Bringing that skill set in early, so the experience and the growth can build within the human factors framework within your diving career. So you start off small at your foundation and then build that strength within HF as you continue on diving. So as an open water instructor, how could one implement human factors into classes? How could you integrate the human factor skill set, particularly non-technical skill sets?
But first, as an open water instructor, like to introduce human factor into your classes, you have to be knowledgeable about human factors. So like increasing your own knowledge is the first step. Coming at conference like this one, like is a great step. Like it's probably the best first step. And then what can you do before like the agency incorporate the specific training in human factor in their regular training? You can already start by adding some little bits in your own training, in your own class. Like every little bit will count. I showed you some example how to present human factors in a very like simple way, and try to encourage like to support your students, especially if you see them after the open water class, after the certification, to go and to seek more training in human factors, because it is important, like to emphasize that like you can become a diver, but you also be a diver. And I think this is a very, like it's a small difference, but it's an important difference to make. Every little step will count. So everything that you do as a leader, like your students will follow. So if you lead by example, you invite them to a conference like this, tell them to go and read a blog on a text on the Human Diver blog, an article there, and then you just debrief it with the group. Like, this is probably the best way to introduce and to share your interest with human factors with your students. Like, being a model for your students is probably the strongest element to bring it in the community. And as I said, bringing it from the start is very important, because it's much harder to change people who have been doing something like for a long time. You have to convince them to have something different. Like, it's like Dr. Mitchell said this morning, introducing human factors in the healthcare was very hard initially, but now that the new doctors are growing with that mindset, it's becoming much easier. So we have to do the same thing in diving, introducing it right from the start.
It's an evolutionary process for sure. It really is. Helen, thank you very much for sharing your presentation with us. For anyone who would like to carry on with this conversation or has additional questions for Helen, you can head over to the Meet the Last Speaker, and Helen will be in Hall 2. Our next speaker is Ashley Judd, and she'll be discussing storytelling and how you can create a positive change through storytelling. But Helen, thank you very much once again for your presentation. It's been a wonderful insight on how to bring that information of human factors into the beginning of a diver's career, or the beginning of a diving hobby, whichever way a person would take it. And thank you very much for your expertise. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Everyone else, we'll see you in about 15-20 minutes with our next speaker, Ashley Bug. Thank you.